3 in 5 doctor visits are from vaginal conditions.
Oh,
$20 billion a year trying to get care and just keep
wow.
getting misdiagnosed. But here's the statistics that's the most dramatic, which is that women lose $40 billion of productivity. So what does that mean? They're not going to work. They're not the kind of mother they want to be. They're not the kind of wife they want to be. They're not the kind of friend they want to be, right? Like when you have a vaginal infection, it's driving you crazy, right?
Mhm.
Like you're not able to do all the things you want to do when you have that.
You are listening to the Midlife with Courage podcast. This is where women in midlife come each week for inspiration, motivation, and sometimes a little education to help them flourish after 40. Make sure you hit the follow button so that you don't miss an episode. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Midlife with Courage. I am Kim Benoy, your host, and I'm so happy to have you here. I'm also very happy to have my guest here with me today. Her name is Wendy Strgar. Welcome to the podcast, Wendy.
Thank you so much for having me today, Kim.
Yeah, we are going to talk about some important things that I think women of any age, but especially us over 50, 40, whatever we are, is important. It's important topics. So tell us where in the world you are and what you do.
So my name's Wendy Strgar, like you said, and I live in Oregon, and I'm the founder, and I was the CEO for a long time, but we just hired a new CEO at Good Clean Love. That's a consumer brand that makes women's health and sexual health products. And I have spun some other companies out of there. One of them is the Institute for Vaginal Health, which is a network of 20,000 medical providers, women's health care providers. And that was just over the course of like giving away millions of samples that we met all those doctors. And then Vaginal Biome Science is my newest business, which we launched in 2021, which is a research and development company. I'm really trying to better understand women's health issues through the lens of the microbiome.
Wonderful. So many things that I want to talk about, but first we want to talk about you. Tell us a time in your life when you showed courage or you were courageous.
That's such a great question because I think it's actually at the heart of everything. One of my very first jobs was in France, and the word cœur is heart. And so, like, that's like when you say in French, courage, it's like of the heart.
Ah,
And so I'm trying to think if there's like one key moment in my life that like somehow courage turned on. But honestly, throughout my life, I feel like I've been trying to do hard things that
mhm.
have not been welcomed. One time was with the FDA when we were trying to get them to change their status about animal testing. And so we brought a huge panel of doctors and researchers together about how the animal testing requirements at the FDA actually led them to approving more and more toxic products.
Mm,
But a lot of people are always about the FDA, don't poke the bear, don't be like on their radar.
mm.
So it took a lot of courage to like actually be meeting at that high level. And then, ever since then, I've kind of had an X on my back. Uh,
Of
but,
course.
but you can't like skirt any rules once they know who you are. So that's an example. I would say that probably some of the biggest examples of courage that I have are more personal. I had 4 children and I lost a child in 2018.
So
And
sorry.
yeah, he was a brilliant, funny guy, and he was very early in the fentanyl crisis in this country. So many people probably listening to the show either know somebody or have had an experience like that themselves. And so, I think the thing that we're most terrified of in life is actually losing someone or something that we can't bear to lose. And I know why people are terrified of that. And figuring out how to go on. And that was just before COVID, right? So it
Mm,
was like, I had this moment where I couldn't imagine how life could continue. And then
sure.
we collectively had this moment where life stopped continuing in many ways. So
Right.
that period of time really defined courage for me in a way that I think I'm still learning, like the courage to feel what happened, the courage to actually reimagine, recreate life, because when you lose someone who you never could imagine losing, you really are like your life has taken a path and you're on a different life then. And so I've done an amazing amount of study, and I started a yoga center focused on grief and yoga. And then, of course, COVID happened, so that didn't actually go where it was supposed to go. But the act of doing it was really powerful for me. So I think actually for me, courage is really about finding the next step in these moments where you can't see the next step. I think actually some of the most important things I've done in that kind of courageous way had to do with grieving earlier, and I never thought in a million years that my son would be part of that. When my younger children were in high school, a terrible tragedy happened in our community where two boys were killed at the coast. And they were sort of these, it was this Axeman pageant gone on every year at this high school. And so anyway, I'd never experienced memorials like that. And it pushed me to create a positive change club at the high school. And we went on to create this courtyard, a memorial courtyard for not just those boys, but it was amazing the people who came forward to share their grief. And so there's something I think for me about trauma and grieving that has made me act. And in many ways, the successes of my business also came out of those moments. So it's like I focus on women's health and all that, but I think being of service is the thing that drives me.
Sure. Yeah, it sure sounds like it. I always have so much admiration for people who have suffered grief or loss and they take it, something good comes out of it or something meaningful. And you may have thought, early on in your life that if someone would have said you were going to go through these losses or this loss, you were going to turn it around and do something good with it. You might have gone, oh, no way. I'm not. I'm going to, curl up in a ball and do nothing. So I just commend you for that.
Yeah, I've met a lot of people, even other people who've lost children to fentanyl, for instance. And,
Mhm.
one guy, I mean, we're not politically on the same page or whatever, but he really activated to do this huge political thing to prevent fentanyl from being able to be sold on like Snapchat and
Uh,
places like that, where his kid actually got it. But so it's really interesting what people do out of those moments. But I would say this about like grief is that I think whether you can actually witness, whether someone else witnesses what you do, or it's just your own internal work, I don't think it's possible to live a life without it actually having meaning.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, I don't think it should be a bar that it's like you have to, like, I mean, we of course started a scholarship in our son's name or whatever. It's like those kinds of acts to sort of remember somebody over time are really important. But I actually think almost the work that we do internally is really the most bold and beautiful thing that we can do. Because
Yeah.
truthfully, when people don't do that work and they just curl up in a ball and they won't leave their bedroom. I mean, I met people like that also, then you didn't just lose that life, then you've actually given up your own life, right?
Right.
But that said, let me just say how painful it is to feel. We have such an amazing capacity for emotional and spiritual experience, which
Mhm.
are almost one and the same, truthfully, for me. And the range is so big. And of course, we love to feel joy and happiness, and we don't want those feelings to end. But those feelings are actually the mirror of the sadness that we're capable of holding. There's much more famous poets than me that have talked about how those are actually mirror experiences, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, and I think the big thing is that when you have any kind of really amazing loss, it could be also people who've just lost their jobs, right? Like
Right.
they felt like they were doing really important work and service, and then suddenly their whole lifestyle was still. I mean, there's millions of ways to experience this deep vulnerability of our lives, and I think that what you get is a real appreciation that the ground under our feet has cracks. You know,
Mm.
not like just somebody that happens to someone else, right? It's like that for all of us. There's cracks everywhere.
Yeah. Let's talk about women's health. And you mentioned that you started the Good Clean Love company. Where did that come from? Why? I mean, I feel like women's health has gotten a bad, what's the
Well, I
term?
mean, you just don't spend any time or attention or money on it, right?
No, all the studies are done on men and
Right. And so, so what that means is that like drugs are not tested on women, even as far back as the 70s. And because that's true, women have 95% of the adverse drug reactions in this country, right?
Mhm.
It happened to my daughter actually, and people die of that. So that's just one consequence. But there was actually early on, you can find writing about, well, a woman's cycle is so complex, how could we study it? I mean, you'd think that would
For
make them
Pete's sake.
want to study it, but that was the reason that they never did and that they were excluded from medical trials. And certainly a woman's cycle is unbelievably complex, but the fact that we haven't really done justice, I mean, only 4% of all medical funding goes to women's health concerns, and we make up 50% of the population.
Wow.
So that I'm doing, we're running a clinical trial now, a data collection trial with 30 sites across the country. This is something that, should be funded by, the NIH,
Hmm.
to understand why 2 out of 3 women get misdiagnosed every day, right? Like this is a huge issue. And yet it's me that's running this trial to be like collecting microbiome swabs at the moment of diagnosis so that we can see what the microbiome is telling us when people get diagnosed. Somebody has to do it. And so it's
Yeah,
me that's doing it.
it's you.
And I think, and me and a lot of other really much smarter than people than me, I think that my work came from 2 things. One was a personal need. So necessity is the mother of invention.
Hmm.
So I had these 4 babies, and now we talk a lot about the risks of pregnancy. It's much more dangerous to have a baby in this country than almost any other, first world country in the world.
Wow.
So many women have such serious adverse effects from childbearing here, especially women of color. And I believe that has something to do with their microbiome also. But again,
Mm.
it's not something I've gotten to study yet. But so I had all these babies, and I had every kind of consequence of having 4 live births, albeit over 10 years. And so that was what drove me to try to find a solution because I would go to the doctor and I'd have really painful sex. I also had a vaginal prolapse from all of that. So
Oh.
I had to have a surgery where they cut out about 2 inches of tissue and sewed that back up. Super grateful now that I did that and that my doctor kind of really pushed me to that because otherwise I'd be one of millions of women that has this mesh trying to hold up their insides.
Mm.
So a lot of women don't have doctors as good as mine, and sometimes gravity does that, but certainly multiple births do that also. It's
Hmm.
pretty common, truthfully. But after that, then sex was really painful. It took a very long time for that tissue to heal. So that's what drove me to become really interested in personal lubrication, honestly.
Yeah, here we
I
go.
I tried, the olive oil in the kitchen, and I was like, this is not really working for me. And then I just started trying to learn about it, and that really was my journey in Good Clean Love. So, and pretty early on, so I'm like getting all these products from the doctor, KY, Astroglide, all the sort of, suspect, kind of large brands.
Hmm.
I'm reading the ingredients and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm allergic to something, right? And
Yeah.
so, they're all made of propylene glycol or polyethylene glycol, which is the same ingredient as antifreeze
Ugh.
and brake fluid. So,
And we're putting this on our most sensitive parts.
exactly. So First, I thought I had to be wrong. Like, that can't be true. And then, no, in fact, that was true. And at first I kind of thought, well, should I tell people about it? Right. Like, again, a moment of courage, or what do you do about this? And then I got mad. I was like, well, no wonder I'm having this response. First, of course, we always blame ourselves. Well, there must be something wrong with me. But
Mhm.
then, you look at the shelf, and this was like, in 1998, 2000, and then I finally started my company 2003. The products that are generally, even to this day, dominate the market are made with ingredients that are better suited to car engines than the most sensitive microbiome tissue in the body. And so I got more and more courageous over time and
Yeah.
started making, because, here's the thing. What I learned, because I was blessed to meet a biophysicist out of Johns Hopkins in my process, and he became like my science mentor, dear friend, actually. And so he taught me a lot of what he learned in this study. In 2012, we were included in a study by the NIH that he was one of the lead researchers on. And they were trying to develop a buffer gel to prevent the spread of HIV at the time.
Oh,
Because all through the first decade of the 2000s, the numbers just kept going up and up and up, and all the education they were trying. So they thought maybe they could make a gel that would prevent this transmission.
hmm
So our lubricant, my tiny little company lubricant, got into that study because we had donated to everybody, and in this case, HIV Alliance.
hmm
And they studied the product. All their consumers were people with HIV, right? So they wanted to make sure the product was safe for them.
Sure.
That was the first time I ever heard the word osmolality, actually, was when they studied the product. I didn't even know what it meant, right? I just was like looking for products that didn't burn and hurt me, right?
Yeah.
And so it turned out that we were isoosmotic, which means that we didn't disrupt the microbiome. A product that's hyperosmolar. So just by definition, it doesn't matter what else is in it, but propylene glycol is 30 times heavier. That's one ingredient than like your mucous membrane can bear, right? And so it's like kind of like an easy way to think about it is weight, but another way to talk about it is salt balance, because you remember in 11th grade chemistry how osmosis works, where like what's heavier pulls moisture out of the cells, or if
hmm
it's lighter, it pushes moisture into the cells.
Yep.
The ideal is that you don't do either of those, that you just leave the cells intact.
hmm
And if you don't leave the cells intact, then what you create is what you call dysbiosis, right? A dysbiotic vaginal microbiome.
hmm
And so once it's dysbiotic, all the moisture is coming out of the top layer of tissue, the epithelium, vaginal epithelium. And that's actually your immune barrier, right? That's what keeps
Ah,
the healthy cells good. And if you've shed all those cells, then the bad bacteria can get right into the deeper tissue,
sure.
essentially. And that's what happens within 4 hours when you use these products that are hyperosmolar.
Ah,
And so that's why I really felt that. I would really reacted. But honestly, even if women don't feel it, that's what's happening to them anyway.
sure.
Um, so I learned that, and then I had to be really courageous and brave to really kind of take it to KY and all those people who were doing that.
Uh,
And
I
and
bet
so
that didn't go over well.
yeah, they tried to sue me first.
Of course they did.
But the thing is that all that data that I was sharing with, doctors when I would go to medical conferences, that was public knowledge.
hmm
So it's not like I was making it up, right? Like it was
Right.
like it was in these studies. And so I'm like, it's too bad you didn't read the studies before you acquired this brand. So I feel like I've gotten really good at legal over the years.
Of necessity.
I only will create cases where I know I'm based in truth,
Mm,
because otherwise, if it's always better to sue people than to be sued. We see this with Donald Trump, right? He's like, I'm not like Donald Trump in any way, but like, usually when you bring a complaint and it's a legitimate complaint that's founded in science, then you have some ground that people know you're serious.
hmm.
And otherwise they can use their force against you, and it usually doesn't go as well when you're a defendant.
Right, right. So you're figuring out this product and how much better it is for women, and you've got those companies coming at you. How do you keep going? Like, what did you do?
So I guess that was like the daily courage, right? That was the
Yeah.
daily act of courage. I've been married for 41 years, which is his own process of courage.
Yay. Yeah.
But my husband he's a physician. So I was able to do that work, all this work for a long time and not need to make money, right? Like
Uh,
I paid people, but never paid myself for 15 years, honestly.
wow.
So that was a privilege that I could do that, right? Like
Mhm.
a lot of people try to start something, don't have that option, that they just can love the work and not need something from it. But the real gift in that was that because I never did it for money, right? Like I could always know the true thing, right? Like
Sure.
I was never deciding based on, will I make more money if I do this, right? I was deciding always by what's real, you know?
Yeah.
When I learned about what became our biomatch patent, and I also feel like I have a little bit of psychic abilities, because whenever something truly resonant, like really important in my life happens, I kind of get chills, and it's like God sort of singing in my head. And so I always, I think, blessedly had the capacity to follow those steps. So when it became clear, then I wrote to everybody in the paper about why we were in there. And I met this one guy at Johns Hopkins, and he saw that I really was trying to just make better products for women. And he taught me a lot of what he'd learned over 30 years doing research in women's health. And his lab was one of the very first labs in the country that did women's health, because you couldn't get funding for it, even less so in 1988. But his daughter died of cancer, and so he was very motivated
Mhm.
to move his career towards women's health. So he also was intrinsically, personally motivated about women's health. And
Sure.
so when he knew that I really also was, he really taught me, became a really serious science teacher for me. And I'm a good student. I mean, I was never an A student, but I can take direction. And so then I started making products within the tenets of what we call our biomatch patent. So,
Yeah.
which is, first, we do no harm. They're isoosmotic. And so long as we leave things intact, then we can actually help women to lower their pH over time by using a form of lactic acid, which this is all in the patent, that actually both lowers the pH. So the pH is the most important lever to stay healthy, vaginally healthy.
Mhm.
And many women, two-thirds of women even, don't have the right bacteria, healthy bacteria. We know it's true, but we don't know why it's true. We don't know why this one-third got the gold ring and
Yeah.
they just well all the time. But many, many women, including me, that's not true about, right? So those women, we can support them to kind of mimic what those healthy women have by not disrupting them first, and then reducing their pH over an extended period of time with this kind of lactic acid that supports both D and L lactate. And that's the key, honestly. Because again, for reasons that we don't understand, because we don't spend money to understand this, there's a kind of bacilli called Einers that many, many women have, especially if they've had multiple rounds of antibiotics. That becomes the substitute that doesn't produce D-lactate. And the body only produces L-lactate. But this healthy bacteria that I'm talking about, which is called crispatus, and there's other types, but they need D and L. They need both, right? Because we're human and mysterious. And so by doing that, by putting that D and L in the system, then good, healthy lab can thrive there. And so
Okay.
that's how we get better.
Awesome. The pH goes down, that's more acidic, so that lactic
So
acid would
it's,
make sense. I'm a
yeah, so
nurse, I'm a retired nurse, so I'm getting the acid-base balance in my head now. Thank you for that.
And like it's second to the gut, right? Like, we've spent so much time studying gut microbiome, but as a nurse, you know that we don't actually just have these separate microbiomes, but, from our eyes and sinuses and our oral biome all the way down to our rectal and vaginal opening, that's all one biome, right? And
Right, yeah.
so I think the future of medicine is going to be really understanding how we can support our microbiome instead of just trying to kill everything in sight all the time.
Right.
Like, how can we make our immune systems more robust? That has to become part of the equation. And, even though we know that antibiotic resistance is really a huge threat to
Hmm.
the well-being of the world writ large, right? Like some countries, it's much worse than others, but, the pace at which antibiotic resistance is growing is akin to climate change, truthfully. And
Mm.
many people think that they're associated phenomenons. But, in women's health, it's still the first line treatment and the one
Yeah,
that's repeated over and over and over again. So we don't even test for antibiotic resistance in women's health.
yeah.
Um, it's just insane. We keep giving the same antibiotics over and over again. And frequently because we don't collect data. So that's the other thing I did is that I created a qPCR microbiome panel that doctors would read and can diagnose off of because they don't get enough information to diagnose. And so
Mhm.
then they keep giving these same antibiotics, even though we see a lot of like E. coli and Enterococcus and other kinds of bacteria from the gut. Now that's showing up in the vaginal microbiome.
Mm. Wow. Oh my gosh. My science brain is just going, no, 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 no. Very cool. So,
But you just learn these things day by day, right?
yeah. So, this product that you have, this biomatch, what did you call it?
Well, the technology is biomatch,
Okay.
and every product we sell at Good Clean Love is made based on biomatch technology. So wouldn't matter what you choose. But so
Mm.
there's sexual health products that are lubricants, and that's how I started, was really trying to save my own sex life, which happy to say I did.
Oh, good job.
But then I really was hitting a wall, and it was really clear that many women they would say to me, "Why are you trying to get me to have sex?" I don't, like, well, it's really good for you,
Yeah.
There is a lot of data about how good it is for you to have sexual pleasure late into your life,
Hmm.
But then it became clear that they were having vaginal pain, not just when they had sex, but all the time.
Mm.
They're not even thinking about sex, right? Like it's not even
That's,
on the screen. You know?
yeah.
And that's like true for such a huge number of women where they have these chronic and recurrent infections. Or, I mean, I could list the long litany of diagnoses you can get,
Mm.
but they're all kind of, I mean, truthfully, we don't have very distinctive treatments for any of them, right? Like either antibiotics or more antibiotics or sometimes even more antibiotics, and then steroids, right?
Mhm.
That's what we give women when their tissue starts to get really inflamed. And sometimes they get all kinds of really very painful dermatidal conditions. And then of course there's the endocrine conditions, whether it's PCOS or endometriosis. But again, those endocrine conditions also have a microbiome component,
Mhm.
and then vaginal symptoms. So we have so much to learn.
Yes.
There's so far to go, but I have heard because we work with, 20,000 doctors, and that's why we can run studies like the one we're running, right? Because those doctors are really motivated to understand this too. At least
Sure.
some of them are. And so, what we see and we hear is that when you use these kinds of products, biomatch products, like even just our balance wash, which is very different from, say, Summer's Eve or any of the other washes on the market, because it's really more like an aloe rinse,
Mm-hmm.
very mild, low percentage of saponifiers that just washes away the detritus, but also brings that lactic acid that I was telling you about. So good,
Hmm.
healthy lactobacilli can live there,
Hmm.
and and regulates the pH down to where it's supposed to be. And so women feel better, their symptoms go away, you
Sure.
know? it only works while you use it. So it's not like it fixes you for life, right?
Yeah.
Like the maintenance process. But if you read our reviews or you look on Reddit, and over, people will say, oh, use this product, you'll get better.
Yeah.
You
Is
know,
it something like for that one, you would use it every day?
yeah, every day. And
Every day.
anything else you have in your wash, in your shower, just throw it away.
Yeah.
A lot of women still use bar soap, and that's actually some of the most harsh saponifiers. And so it's basically killing everything good there, and screwing up your pH and filling you with, anything that has fragrance in it is
Oh.
by definition toxic. We do use flavors, which are like only when we have to, like when an aloe product, the aloe scent is so strong that
Hmm.
if we don't use a flavor, then people would not like it, right?
Hmm.
But a flavor that you could eat, right? So by definition, the rules when you make a flavor, you're not going to get that same kind of acute scent the way you do on fragrances.
Hmm.
So it's a much milder experience, but
Yeah.
but you could eat it, although you wouldn't eat soap. But a couple of our lubricants are almost naked, and our hint of mint lubricant has a organic compliant flavor that you could eat. But so yeah, we most of our products that are the most biomatch, we don't use flavors even, but
Yeah.
some products. But that balance wash, like right now, we're doing a study with one of our doctors because she's a vulvar specialist. She's on
Oh,
the board of vulvodynia doctors nationally.
wow.
And she believes that our wash is the safest wash for every patient that has this condition. And so we're doing a study of her patients so that we can actually see if we can get proof of that.
Nice.
I'm sure it's true, but I just keep thinking about your question about courage.
Yeah.
You know, but honestly, I don't know if it's me that has the most courage, but like some of these women I talk to, I have calls with some of our customers that write these reviews, that literally they say, you saved my life. And I'm like, I want to talk to her and hear what happened. Sometimes these women are like crying, and they tell
Oh.
the treatment they had, what doctors did to them. This woman told me yesterday that this woman actually put her under general anesthesia to do a pap exam on her because she couldn't, like, because her vulvodynia is so extreme, she couldn't actually have a speculum put into her.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and so can you imagine she was put under general anesthesia without even the doctor telling her what was happening for her?
Oh no. That's
And
not
so,
okay.
I mean, there's so many, like a doctor told me this story that when women go through cancer treatment, which is some of the harshest treatment that you can have, either breast or reproductive cancers. But reproductive is really, really harsh because they radiate your tissue, right?
Mhm.
Like, and that's like if you think of like having a piece of pizza and burning the roof of your mouth,
Oh,
that's like your whole vagina is like your burnt roof of your mouth, right? And
yeah.
you can
Ouch.
get this thing frequently. This happens. This is a frequent side effect of this treatment of obliterated vagina where your vagina walls stick together and they can't even be surgically treated.
Mm.
And this doctor tells his patients, go to the craft store and get a candle to stop that from happening.
Oh, Lord.
And I'm like, what did you just say?
Oh my gosh. That sounds like something from like,
A horror movie?
yes, or like the
Yeah.
Dark
Well,
Ages or
I
something.
just want to say that it is still the dark ages for women.
Yeah.
And I really want to say that in this country, it's dark, but in some countries, it's the black of night. You
Mhm.
know, when I think about my work, and I get chills when I say it out loud, when I think about my work, I feel like I do really believe that this earth is our mother. And the way that we treat women on this planet is the reason we are in the situation we are in every way.
Yeah.
And in some countries, it's so horrific. Women who have to cover their whole person because otherwise, that they should strike the lust of a man, and that is the responsibility of the woman.
Yeah.
Other countries where women take their little tiny girls to get their clitorises cut off to
Uh,
believe she'll be unclean if she can feel anything.
Yeah.
Even though those surgical operations are done in dark huts where the girls will die of infection. I
Mm.
mean, these things happen by the millions every day. Young girls are married or sold and burned, and it's not even a crime. So I just feel like that I was born at a moment in a country where I can try to uplift or ease the pain of anyone, any woman, then
Mhm.
I feel like I am giving something to sort of the goddess that is trying so hard to rise up in this time.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh, so well said.
Yeah,
Another thing that came up for me too is the way women are treated, and you said it too. We're blown off, especially when perimenopause comes along.
totally.
All these symptoms that we have, well, you're just going to have to get through it. It's just what happens. Like,
Even like when you have endometriosis, which is such a painful condition,
mhm.
many women go 10 years without a diagnosis, and the only way they can confirm it is by cutting you open. So
Yeah,
it's like, what is going on?
yeah,
And yeah, menopause. I mean, now menopause is kind of having its day,
yeah.
finally, because some stars are screaming about it. But think how many centuries of women have gone through. And I mean, we're only just entering really the nascence of this third part of our life, right? When we
Mhm.
stop being reproductive and we go into menopause. And really, even what we know about hormones is very limited. I mean, there was some really old, not very good studies that were done with animal hormones,
Mhm.
but now we have bioidentical hormones, which I am a huge proponent of, and I use myself. I
Mhm.
can't actually quite imagine my life without them, honestly, but there's so much misinformation.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
many doctors can't really speak with any authority at all about how to help women with this really dramatic shift of
Ugh,
hormones because, I mean, your hormones are basically the driver of every function
everything.
in and you really only realize it when you lose them, right? I
Right.
mean, before that, you're like, damn, cycling was pretty good, you
Yeah.
know? But yeah, like how you think, your heart, right? Your temperature control, I mean, they impact everything. And I had a very, very, very bad perimenopause, menopause transition.
Mm.
So I was pretty much pushed to like early on. But honestly, they say the earlier you go into bioidenticals, the better it is for you. So if you're listening out there and you're going through that, for sure find someone who knows because there are people who do know a lot about this
Mhm.
and and get your questions answered because you deserve answers. There's a lot of websites that do stuff. We're going to have actually my new exciting and hopefully my last big project in this life is a new website we're launching called Womankind Care. And I'm trying to raise money right now, which is not a great time for that, to launch this by the end of the year or beginning of 26. And it's just going to be basically redefining vaginal health care for women. So we'll have doctors on there. So if you need a prescription, you can get it on there. But we'll also have all of these biomatch protocols designed for all these different conditions we've been talking about, whether vulvar, cancer, BV, UTIs, all the kind of the 12 most common conditions women are diagnosed with.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. We're gonna have to have you back when you get that up and running and stuff. Yeah. So we can we put a link to that in the show notes for
Yes,
this?
for
Okay.
sure.
Okay,
And
awesome.
also we're going to send you a link so people can use a coupon. And I don't know if Angela sent it to you yet, but we'll send you a coupon with your show title 20. And then all of your listeners can go and buy these biomatch products on Good Clean Love. And hopefully
Awesome.
this is better soon. So
Yeah, I mean it's a topic you don't want to talk about it, but you're afraid to bring it up, but it's so
please.
important.
Well, I mean, actually, speaking of that, 2 to 3 in 5 doctor visits are from vaginal conditions. We
Oh,
spend
well,
$20 billion a year trying to get care and just keep
Wow.
getting misdiagnosed. But here's the statistics that's the most dramatic, which is that women lose $40 billion of productivity. So what does that mean? They're not going to work. They're not the kind of mother they want to be. They're not the kind of wife they want to be. They're not the kind of friend they want to be, right? Like when you have a vaginal infection, it's driving you crazy, right?
Mm,
Like you're not able to do all the things you want to do when you have that. And
right.
I just had a norovirus not too long ago, which was
Oh,
horrible. But I got a really robust yeast infection, which I haven't had in years. And it took me a while to get what was happening because I'm so good with my regime, like of
mhm.
keeping it going. But I'm telling you, during that week that it took me to figure it out, I could not do all the other things. You know,
Oh, sure.
it was like this was the only thing I could think about was how my vagina was itching and burning. And,
It's
so
a big thing.
there's so many nerve endings there,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It really is the foundation of your health when you're a woman, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, so women really don't want to talk about it. In fact, that woman I was telling you this story about how she was put under general sedation. So they started a really interesting group called Tight Lipped because there's millions and millions of women, 29 million women in this country that have these
Wow.
conditions.
Yeah.
And many women want to be anonymous because they don't want people to know they have it. So
Yeah.
it's like even as they're trying to create this advocacy group, and they're really doing something critical because they're trying to get doctors to be trained in this. Doctors
Mm.
aren't even taught this stuff,
No.
their medical training. So they're trying to work with teaching hospitals to have this included in the training, which is like
Yeah.
so foundational, right? But she's telling me that so many women don't tell anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a hard thing to talk about, but so
Uh,
important that we do. So, oh my gosh, Wendy, thank you so much for all of this information. Where would you like people to go to find out more about you and what you're doing and your products?
Yeah, so of course, Good Clean Love, and you're going to have a coupon that you can put in the notes,
Thank you.
and I have blogs that I've written for decades on that site. Then there's also vaginalbiomescience.com, and then you can see a little bit more of our work. We're just in the middle of redoing that website, so it should be looking good soon, I hope. Um,
Okay.
and I have a website that also really needs to be redone, but it's wendystrgar.com. But I do all that TikTok silly stuff. So
Mm.
there's a lot of videos of me talking about vaginal health. If
Okay.
your channel is TikTok or Instagram or wherever you do that. So you can easily find me talking about a ton of different vaginal issues and sometimes love and commitment and relationship. And we didn't really get to talk about that too much, but I did write a
Yeah.
couple books about love and sex.
Oh, okay.
So we should do it some other time because that's such an important topic and one that women are really scared to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, would be happy to come back and talk about that with you too, Kim, if this
Yeah.
show does. Yeah.
I think we definitely should do that. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
book that. We'll get that. Yeah, for sure. That sounds wonderful. Before we
Yeah.
say goodbye, is there any one last little message or piece of advice you want to give the listeners?
I guess I would say that, one of the things that women struggle with the most, or at least I know I even still do, is trusting yourself and trusting your own voice, right? Like about whatever that is, whether it's about a relationship or certainly most foundationally your own health. So it's like you know better than anybody what's happening to you. And if you aren't getting support or people are just blowing you off or people aren't hearing you, trust yourself. Keep looking for somebody that hears you so that you can get the kind of support you need. And hopefully Womankind Care is going to be able to do that for a lot of women soon. So
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Listen to yourself. You've got it inside you already. You just have to so
trust it. Yeah.
trust it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Wendy, this has been so amazing. So thank you so much. And I
I
know we
so
will talk.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we'll talk to you again.
All right. Take care, Kim. Thanks again for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for listening to the Midlife with Courage podcast. If you liked what you heard, I would love it if you would leave a review, or even better, send a link of this episode to a friend. Until next time, take care of your beautiful self.